Sonic, the heart of your system.
Hi and welcome back to a new video. As you could judge by the title of this video, we are building again a PC for another YouTuber here in Germany. I would classify him as survival YouTuber. He's pretty famous in Germany for doing a special version of a Mercedes G-Class where he could live inside the car, and also was building some tree houses on Madeira. So quite interesting stuff. And he recently contacted me and said, because of the current situation, staying at home, he also wants to play more games, start streaming, and therefore he needs a PC. And that's what we're going to build in today's video. And I also like the way he's looking at things, because I talked to him on the phone, and comparing especially to the previous build which we were doing for a German YouTuber, he has a completely different view on things. He, for example, doesn't like to have his PC sitting next to him on his desk. He wants to have it underneath his desk. It's just a piece that has to work as silent as possible, and the looks is not important, so we don't need a case that has, for example, tempered glass side. We can go on silent and noise dampening cases. So I think this will be quite interesting and a completely different build. Yeah, let's just start. For this build I decided to go for X570 as a base, and I didn't want to go for AMD Threadripper, because Fritz also said that in his opinion we should go for something that makes more sense and is more affordable than going for AMD Threadripper, because obviously it's a massive platform, but the mainboards are so much more expensive, and you can get 24, 30 to 64 core CPUs, but it's not necessary for what he wants to do. For most of what YouTubers are doing for basic streaming, gaming and video editing, 12 cores, 16 cores are absolutely fine. That's why we decided to go for X570 instead of AMD Threadripper. I decided to go for the 3950X. 16 cores should be more than enough. Decided to go for the MSI X570 Creation mainboard, mainly because it has good voltage regulators. It has a nice design when it comes to the cooling, because you have this heat pipe that's connecting the PCH and also the VRM cooling block. That's something I really appreciate. And it has 10G LAN, which is one of the main aspects that he also said would be interesting. And most other boards, except for I think one ASRock board, they are like 800, 900 euros. That's why I went for the MSI X570 Creation. We're going to use an MP510 from Corsair, 2 TB NVMe drive, generation 3, not generation 4, because the benefit for generation 4 over 3 is not that much, especially if you consider how much more expensive they are, how much higher the power consumption is, and temperatures and all of that. That's why I thought MP510 with 2 TB is more than enough. We're going to use 2 sticks Vengeance LPX, total 64 GB, where we have 2 times 32 GB sticks. And unfortunately, they were only available right now for 3000 MHz speed. I would like to go for 3200, but 3200 I couldn't find, or they were not available. That's why I went for 3000 MHz. I think it's still fine to use this kind of memory speed. And I decided to go for only 2 sticks, mainly because if he ever decides, or if he notices that the memory is not enough, then he can just buy another kit of those, plug it in and upgrade to 128 GB, and that should be plenty for the next few years. Okay, let's start assembly of the bundle. For CPU cooling, we're using the Aqua Computer Krios Next CPU cooling block. In general, I picked it mainly because it doesn't have RGB. It's a little bit cheaper than the rest, and it has an absolutely stunning build quality. It's the nickel acetal version, black POM on top and nickel plated copper base. It's also fairly cheap. It's not really cheap. It's still 60 euro, but comparing it to the rest on the market, I think it's a reasonable price for this block and should have very good cooling performance. Quick look at the MSI X570 Creation motherboard. Going to put the NVMe drive in here. Both of those slots would be generation 4 if you're going to use them, but in my case it doesn't matter because I'm using only a generation 3 drive. The main decision when it comes to the heatsink, why I picked this board, is because apart from the fact that we have a heat pipe that is connecting all of the VRM cooling blocks and also the PCH or FCH cooling block, is also the fact that this block has a sufficient amount of surface area. If you compare it with other chipset coolers, most of them don't really have so much surface area, and therefore the fan is often required to spin. In this case, it's already connected with the VRM cooling blocks, and because the CPU will not be overclocked, the power consumption is not that high. Therefore, most of the chipset heat can also be dissipated through the other heatsink, so that should be safe, and in most cases, this fan should not spin. Looking at the I/O shield of this board, we have 13 times USB in this case. Most of them are USB 3.0. Then we also have USB Type-C right here. We have 2 times LAN. One of them is 10G audio right here, which doesn't really matter because we're going to use a dedicated audio card anyway. And then we have Wi-Fi and also PS2. Next step is GPU assembly. I picked an RTX 2080 Ti from EVGA. EVGA didn't really matter in this case because I was just looking for the cheapest RTX 2080 Ti, which is available where I can mount a full cover water block. First I thought maybe I would just go for air cooling for the full build, but the focus is really to have it as silent as possible, and even those aftermarket coolers, even though they're good, they still have some kind of noise level at a certain point if you're in 3D, if you're gaming. Therefore, I decided to go for custom water cooling, but I wanted to keep the custom water cooling loop as cheap as possible, because really it does not matter if the GPU is running at 45 degrees Celsius or at 50 degrees Celsius, nothing will be overclocked, neither CPU nor GPU. That's why the exact cooling performance did not matter. The focus is only that it's going to be silent. It's going to be the EK full cover block in the classic version because it's mainly a little bit cheaper than the other blocks. It's also available, or it comes with RGB. We didn't want to have RGB, but I think there was no choice to go without it. We're quickly talking about the water cooling components. I decided to go for the Arctic P12 PWM 120mm fans. I tested those fans for a Caseking TV YouTube video where we were comparing a lot of different fans, and those fans are actually really good, especially for the price. One of those fans is about 7 euros in the Caseking store, therefore very affordable, and especially if you compare it to the performance and also the noise level, those fans are really good. I can absolutely recommend these, and 7 euro per piece, fairly cheap. We have 7 of those fans in total. 6 of them will go onto radiators. We have Magical 360 slim radiators. Those should be absolutely sufficient for 3950X and the 2080 Ti. Both will be not overclocked, so the power consumption is not that high. And if we compare the prices of those, for example with some Corsair RGB fans, I think most of the Corsair RGB fans are somewhere between 25 and 30 euro per piece. We're basically getting 7 normal fans, which are quite good for the price of 2 RGB fans. That's actually a quite big difference. Most people think of Magical as a quite cheap and maybe not that great manufacturer, but quality-wise they are really good, and Magical is also a big OEM for a lot of other radiator brands. So they're producing a lot of stuff and they have a significant amount of experience when it comes to producing radiators, so I can assure you that the quality of those is quite good, and especially comparing the price. One of them is about 47 euro here in Germany, and that's almost half the price of one of the EKPE radiators. Mainboard is already in place. I'm just about to remove the front fans. There are 3 fans in total included in the case, 3x140mm, and I'm going to keep the one in the rear for exhaust. I'm going to use the 3 120mm fans in the front as intake, and also going to use the 3 on top for exhaust. That should be a good combination, especially because in the front we will have a dust filter, should be a good intake, and then only exhaust on the rear and on top. I'm again using an EK D5 reservoir pump combination, this time with the glass reservoir, which is something I really like because typically you don't see any kind of residues sticking to the inside of the glass, so it's really nice for long-term use, and also using this fan mounting bracket to attach it to the radiator. I'm using a Seasonic Prime fanless titanium PSU for today's build. As the name implies, it's a fanless PSU, therefore no fan inside, no active components. This should further reduce the noise that's possibly coming out of the system. I know that most PSUs nowadays are semi-passive anyway, but with no fan at all, we're definitely reducing the noise even more. It can in theory deliver up to 600 watt, which should be absolutely sufficient for a 16-core AMD and a 2080 Ti. To give Fritz a little bit of extra audio quality, I decided to go for the Asus Essence STX2, which is a very good audio solution. It has a full-size audio jack, therefore suitable for most of the high-quality audio and streaming microphones, which was something that is really important to him, to have a very good audio quality on his stream. Already performed the first performance tests. The system is completely silent. All fans are currently set to about 700 RPM, and especially if you attach the side panels, it's absolutely impossible to hear anything from this build. Times by Extreme score just about 7000 points, which is a normal result for 2080 Ti in combination with a 3950X, which is running at stock. Maximum GPU temperature in this case was 46 degrees Celsius, which I think is absolutely fine considering that I'm running the lowest fan speed possible. The CPU peaked out at 70-80 degrees Celsius during the physics test of 3D Mark Times by Extreme, and the VRM temperature peaked out at 59 degrees Celsius. Cinebench R20 score is also in line with just above 9200 points. Now I'm going to perform 1 hour of stress test with the system closed, and then we will be back with final temperature results. I just tested the system about 1 hour with Prime 95 and Furmark at the same time. Prime 95 also using AVX, that's why the CPU temperature is relatively high when it comes to the max. The maximum CPU temperature was 86 degrees Celsius, but that was only the peak. I only saw it for a couple of seconds. Typically it was between 65 and 70 degrees Celsius even in Prime 95 while running Furmark. Means that the VGA was loaded with maximum of 53 degrees Celsius, and the VRM temperature of the mainboard was maximum 69 degrees Celsius. I think all of those temperatures are absolutely fine considering that we're running the fans at the lowest RPM possible, therefore at the lowest noise level, and especially running Prime 95 on 16 cores and then Furmark at the same time, that should be the maximum system load that's possible. And it's quite warm in my room right now, about 24 to 25 degrees Celsius. Therefore this system should be absolutely safe to use in any condition, because typically when are you going to fully utilize GPU and CPU at this level? I don't think this is going to happen. That's why I think the result is quite cool. The total system price was about 4,300 euro. If you don't need the sound card, it's just above 4,000 euro. And considering that you're getting 16 cores and a 2080 Ti and fully custom water cooled, I think this is an absolutely reasonable price. Obviously it doesn't have RGB because you're not gonna see it. For the P600S, as I said before, we're not using the tempered glass version, we're using the normal steel side panel, and it has some noise absorbing stuff on the inside. Therefore it makes it also quite a little bit more heavy, but should help in reducing or further reducing the noise. If this system is closed, you really absolutely cannot hear anything, and you could reduce it further if you would hear anything, but you don't. For the P600S you can also close the top and the front, but this would further restrict airflow, and therefore you should probably, or you probably have to use a higher RPM on the fans. Therefore I think it's not going to be better. I think it's smarter to run very low RPM so you cannot hear the fans and have a better airflow. That's why I will keep the system this way. Quite happy with the result of this system. I hope that Fritz will have a very nice time streaming with this rig. We'll send it over to him on Monday. Let's end this video with some close-up shots on this system. Thanks for joining in and see you next time.